Taemin checked his tablet as he walked through the long corridor of Station Epsilon 7. The space station floated quietly above a small moon, far from Earth. He had arrived just 3 days ago, and everything still felt new and strange. The walls were gray, metal, and the lights hummed softly above his head. His job was simple: fix things when they broke. Doors, gravity plates, air filters, anything that needed repair. He liked this work. It was honest and straightforward. When something was broken, he made it work again. People were happy. Problem solved. Today he was heading to Sector D to check a door that kept sticking. His friend Yuna had sent him a message earlier that morning. She worked in the biology labs, studying how different alien species lived and communicated. Big news. She had written. The Velcrin delegation just arrived. 4 cubs with them. You should see them, Taemin. They're adorable, but look so serious. Taemin smiled at that. He had heard about the Velcrin. They were a proud species, feline in appearance, walking on 2 legs with striped fur covering their bodies. They rarely left their home planets. Having them on the station was unusual. Having their young ones here was almost unheard of. He turned a corner and stopped. 4 small figures stood in front of a sealed door, looking confused. They were about the height of human children, maybe 10 or 11 years old. Their fur was soft-looking, striped in shades of gold and brown. Large eyes, round and curious, stared at the control panel beside the door. Their ears twitched with frustration. Need some help? Taemin asked, keeping his voice friendly and calm. All 4 cubs jumped and spun around, their tails puffed up in surprise. One of them, the smallest with lighter stripes, stepped forward. She tilted her head, studying him carefully. The door will not open, she said. Her voice was high and careful, like she was choosing each word with great effort. We press the button. Nothing happens. Taemin walked over and looked at the panel. He could see the problem immediately. Someone had accidentally activated the maintenance lock. Easy fix. He pulled out his small toolkit and opened the panel cover. This happens sometimes, he explained as he worked. The lock gets switched on by accident. Just need to reset it. The cubs crowded around him, watching every move. He could hear their quiet breathing, sense their intense focus. Within 2 minutes, he had the problem solved. The door slid open with a soft hiss. There you go, Taemin said, standing up and brushing off his knees. All fixed. The smallest cub's eyes went wide. Just like that, Taemin confirmed with a smile. We have been here for 12 minutes, another cub said. This one was taller, with darker stripes. We did not know what to do. Well, now you know. If a door won't open, there's usually a simple reason. Maintenance lock, power glitch, or maybe something stuck in the track. Taemin closed his toolkit. I'm Taemin, by the way. I fix things around the station. The cubs looked at each other, then back at him. The smallest one spoke again. I am Pick. This is Shan, Moru, and Jessa. She pointed to each of her companions. We are here for cultural exchange. To learn about other species. That's great, Taemin said. Welcome to Epsilon 7. It's a good place. You are not angry with us? Moru asked suddenly. His tail swished nervously. We were in a restricted maintenance area. Elder Krivoth says we must follow all rules exactly. Taemin shrugged. You didn't break anything. You just got stuck at a locked door. No harm done. I won't tell anyone if you won't. Oh. For the first time, he saw their serious expressions soften slightly. Pick's ears perked up. You would do that? Not report us? Thanks. Also see. Nover 1. Nothing to report. Taemin said simply. You kids have a good day, okay? Try not to get lost in any more maintenance corridors. He started to walk away, but Pick called after him. Taemin? Thank you. You are very kind. He waved over his shoulder and continued down the corridor, smiling to himself. Cute kids. A bit too formal and serious, but cute. That evening, Tae-min met Yuna in the station cafeteria. The large room was filled with dozens of species, all eating their own specialized foods. The air smelled like a mixture of everything: sweet, sour, spicy, and things he couldn't quite identify. Yuna was already sitting at their usual table near the observation window. Beyond the transparent wall, stars stretched out forever, cold and beautiful. "So," she said as he sat down with his tray of noodles, "did you meet any of the Velcrin cubs yet?" "Funny you should ask," Tae-min said, and told her about the stuck door. Yuna laughed. "See? I told you they were cute, but I've been watching them in the common areas. They always look so tense, like they're afraid of making mistakes. Their elder seems pretty strict," Tae-min said, remembering what Moru had said about following rules exactly. "Elder Krivoth is traditional, very traditional." Yuna leaned forward, lowering her voice, even though no one nearby could understand Korean. "I've read about Velcrin culture. They have all these complicated honor codes and dignity requirements. Young ones are expected to be quiet and obedient until they reach adulthood. That sounds exhausting, right? Can you imagine being a kid and not being allowed to just be a kid?" Yuna shook her head. "They've been on the station for a week now, and I haven't seen those cubs play or laugh once. They just follow their elder around, looking serious about everything." Tae-min thought about Pik's surprised expression when he said he wouldn't report them, like she expected punishment for the smallest mistake. Over the next few days, he kept running into the cubs. Not by accident, he realized after the third time. They were following him. Not obviously, not like they were spying, but whenever he was working on a repair in a public area, they would appear. He pretended not to notice at first. Then one afternoon, while he was fixing a gravity plate in one of the recreation areas, he decided to acknowledge them. "You four want to see how this works?" he called out. The cubs, who had been standing near a wall about 10 meters away, looked startled, then excited. They hurried over. Tae-min explained the gravity plate as he worked. How it generated a field that kept things pressed down, creating artificial weight in the station. How the circuits could wear out and need replacing. How you had to be careful with the power flow or you could get a nasty shock. They listened with complete attention. Pik asked smart questions. Sean carefully examined each tool when Tae-min showed them. Moru and Jessa watched the actual repair process, their eyes following every movement of his hands. Finally, he closed the panel and powered up the plate. A soft hum indicated it was working properly. "Perfect," he said, mostly to himself. That's when Yuna appeared. She had come to check on some biological samples in the nearby lab. When she saw the repair was done, she grinned and raised her hand up high. "Nice work, Tae-min." Without thinking, he reached up and slapped her hand. The sharp crack of their palms meeting echoed in the space. A high five. Simple and automatic. When he looked back at the cubs, all four were staring at their hands with expressions of complete wonder. "What was that?" Pik asked, her voice almost a whisper. "What was what?" Tae-min was confused. "That thing you did. With your hands." They touched in the air and made a sound. She mimicked the motion awkwardly. Raising her paw, Yuna laughed. "Oh, the high five? It's just something humans do. It means good job, or celebration, or we did it together." "We did it together," Pik repeated slowly, like she was tasting the words. Tae-min raised his hand. Yuna slapped it again. Crack. The cubs watched with intense focus. Jessa's tail was swishing with excitement. Moru leaned forward, studying the angle and speed. Sean's ears were completely perked up. "Can we try?" Pik asked. Before Tae-min could answer, a deep voice cut through the moment. "Cubs, come. Now." Elder Krivoth stood at the corridor entrance. He was tall for a Velcrin, his fur gray with age. His eyes were sharp and disapproving. The cubs immediately straightened. their playful curiosity vanishing into formal stillness. "Yes, Elder," they said in unison, and followed him away without looking back. But Taemin saw Pick glance over her shoulder once, her eyes on his hand, still raised in the air. For 3 days, Taemin didn't see the cubs. He wondered if Elder Krivath had forbidden them from wandering the station. He felt a little guilty about that. Maybe the high five had seemed inappropriate to the traditional Velkrin. Maybe he had caused trouble for the young ones. On the 4th day, he was eating lunch alone in a small observation lounge when Pick appeared in the doorway. She looked around carefully before entering. "Hello, Taemin," she said quietly. "Hey, Pick. Where are your friends?" "They are with Elder Krivath at a diplomatic function. I was excused because I am not feeling well." She didn't look sick. She looked nervous. "I lied. I am feeling fine. I wanted to find you." Taemin set down his sandwich. "Is everything okay?" Pick came closer and sat on the bench across from him. Her tail curled around her feet. "Will you teach me that thing? The hand-touching thing? The high five? You came all the way here just to ask that?" "Yes." Her large eyes were serious. "I have been thinking about it every day. The way you and Yuna did it. It looked so happy. So free. Nothing in our culture is like that. Everything we do has rules and meanings and proper forms. But that gesture looked like pure joy." Taemin smiled. "It's really not that complicated. You just raise your hand, and the other person hits it with theirs. Like this." He raised his hand, palm out. Pick studied it, then slowly raised her paw. She touched his palm gently, barely making contact. No, Taemin said. "You have to hit it. With some force. That's where the sound comes from. The sound is important. It makes it feel real." Pick tried again. This time she swung her paw harder. It connected with his palm with a loud crack. The sound was even sharper than a human high five. Her paw pads dense and hard. Her eyes went huge. Oh, that feels good, right?" They practiced for several minutes. Each successful hit made Pick's ears perk up more. Her tail started swishing with excitement. She began experimenting with different angles and speeds. "It is remarkable," she said, slightly out of breath. "Such a simple action, but it creates connection. You feel it, yes? When our hands meet?" "Yeah, I do. In Velkrin tradition, when young ones achieve something, we bow to our elders. We wait for their approval. We never celebrate ourselves. But this high five, it lets you celebrate together. As equals." Pick looked at her paw like she was seeing it for the first time. "Can I show the others?" "Eck. Of course. It's not a secret. Humans do it all the time." Over the next week, something changed on the station. Taemin started hearing that distinctive crack sound in different corridors. He would turn a corner and see the 4 cubs practicing high fives with each other. Sean was teaching Maru the proper palm angle. Jessa had developed a running high five that she performed at full speed. Yuna reported seeing them in the education center, high-fiving after completing their lessons. One of the Thanari workers mentioned seeing the cubs high five after successfully ordering food from the cafeteria dispenser. They were doing it constantly. Taemin found it amusing and charming. The cubs had taken this simple human gesture and made it their own. They had even started calling it something else. When he asked Pick about it, she said proudly, "We call it Victory Strike, because every small victory deserves acknowledgement." But not everyone thought it was charming. Taemin was in the middle of replacing a burnt-out power coupling when Elder Krivath found him. The old Velkrin's presence filled the corridor, heavy and disapproving. "Engineer Taemin." "We must speak." Taemin set down his tools and stood. "Of course, Elder. Is something wrong? You have been teaching my cubs inappropriate behaviors. The high five? This victory strike, as they insist on calling it." Elder Krivath's tail lashed once, sharply. "It is undignified. It is loud. It is constant. They do it after everything now. Finishing a meal. Solving a puzzle. walking through a doorway successfully. It has become an obsession. With respect, Elder, is that really so bad? They seem happy. Happy. The word came out flat. Happiness is not the goal of youth. Discipline is. Learning is. Preparation for adult responsibilities is. These cubs are meant to observe other cultures with seriousness and focus. Instead, they are performing these theatrical hand-slapping gestures at every opportunity. Taemin chose his words carefully. I understand your concern, but from what I've seen, they are learning. They're engaging with the station and other species more than before. They seem more confident. They seem less Velcrin, Elder Krivoth said coldly. You do not understand what you have done. Our culture has survived for thousands of years because we maintain our dignity and our traditions. Young ones must learn restraint. They must learn that not every moment requires celebration. Life is serious, engineer. They must prepare for that seriousness. But they're children. They are cubs who will one day lead our people. Would you want leaders who clap their hands together like excited infants at every minor accomplishment? Taemin had no good answer to that. He could see the elder's point, even if he disagreed with it. Different cultures had different values. Who was he to say the Velcrin way was wrong? I will stop teaching them, he said finally. I apologize if I caused offense. Elder Krivoth studied him for a long moment. You meant no harm, I understand that. Humans are naturally informal, but please, keep your distance from the cubs. Let them learn to be Velcrin, not human. After the elder left, Taemin felt hollow. He had only wanted to share something fun. He hadn't thought about the cultural implications. He told Yuna about it that evening. That's so sad, she said. The cubs finally found something that makes them light up. And now, it's being taken away. Maybe Krivoth is right, though. Maybe I was being culturally insensitive. You were being kind. There's a difference. Yuna stirred her tea thoughtfully. I've been documenting their behavior for my research. The cubs are significantly more engaged with their environment since learning Victory Strike. They're participating in more activities. They're interacting with other species more. Last week, they spent 2 hours playing a strategy game with some Gorvan adolescents. Before Victory Strike, they barely spoke to anyone except each other. But maybe that's not the Velcrin way. Maybe the Velcrin way needs updating. Yuna said quietly. Taemin did as Elder Krivoth asked. He kept his distance from the cubs. When he saw them in corridors, he nodded politely and moved on. He didn't stop to chat or watch their victory strikes, but he noticed things. He noticed that the cubs kept doing it anyway. When Elder Krivoth wasn't looking, they would exchange quick victory strikes, muffling the sound with their paws. Peak especially seemed unable to stop. Every small success still ended with her raising her paw, looking for someone to strike it. He noticed that other young aliens had started copying the gesture. A pair of the Nari younglings, with their insectoid bodies, had adapted it into an antenna tap. They would touch their long antennae together with a soft clicking sound. They saw the cubs do victory strike, and wanted their own version. He noticed that Elder Krivoth looked more stern each day, and the cubs looked more subdued. One afternoon, Taemin was working on a ventilation system near the cubs' quarters when he heard voices inside. The door was slightly open. But why can we not do victory strike? That was Jessa's voice, frustrated. It harms no one. It makes us happy, because it is not our way. Elder Krivoth's voice was tired. You are Velcrin. You must act like Velcrin. Other species can do as they please, but you represent our people. Every action you take reflects on our entire culture. Our culture is sad, Peak said quietly. There was a long silence. You are confined to quarters for the rest of the day, Elder Krivoth said finally. All of you. Perhaps isolation will help you remember why discipline matters. Taemin moved away before he could be caught listening, but he couldn't stop thinking about Pick's words. Our culture is sad. That night, he lay in his small quarters, staring at the ceiling. He thought about the first time he saw the cubs, so serious and tense. He thought about how Pick's whole face had transformed the first time she successfully did a victory strike. He thought about joy and tradition, and whether the two had to be enemies. He didn't have answers. But he knew one thing. Whatever happened next, those 4 cubs had changed. They had tasted something new. Something happy and free and theirs. That kind of knowledge couldn't be taken away, no matter what rules were enforced. Outside his window, the stars burned cold and distant, watching everything and judging nothing. 3 weeks had passed since Taemin first taught the cubs about high fives. The victory strike had taken on a life of its own. In the station's youth education center, a Thanari youngling named Chick touched antennae with his friend after solving a math puzzle. Click, click. Other younglings saw and copied. Within days, every young Thanari on the station was doing it. In the recreation area, a Gorvan adolescent tried to victory strike with one of the cubs. His rocky, crystalline hand was too hard and sharp for a proper palm strike. So they adapted. Fist bump, rock to paw. A new variation was born. Taemin watched it all from a distance. He still kept away from the cubs as Elder Krivath had requested, but he couldn't help feeling a strange pride. That simple gesture, taught in a moment of friendly impulse, was spreading across species barriers. It was becoming something bigger than he had imagined. Yuna was documenting everything. She showed him her research notes one evening over dinner. "Look at these statistics," she said, her tablet displaying graphs and charts. "Youth cooperation scores are up 34% since Victory Strike became common. Multi-species youth groups are forming naturally now. Before, young aliens mostly stayed with their own kind. Now they're mixing, playing together, learning together. Because of a high five? Because of what the high five represents. A shared language of celebration that doesn't require words or technology. Just connection." Yuna scrolled through images on her tablet. "I've recorded 17 different species-specific variations. Each one adapted to fit their physiology, but all serving the same purpose. Acknowledgement, partnership, joy." Taemin looked at a video of Moru teaching a small, furry alien how to do a proper victory strike. The alien's paws were too soft to make a good sound, so Moru showed him how to add a little hop for emphasis. Both of them ended up laughing, a sound that translated across species. "How are the cubs doing?" Taemin asked quietly. Yuna's smile faded. "Not great. Elder Krivath has them on a strict schedule now. Educational sessions, meditation, cultural study. Very little free time. I see them sometimes in the corridors. They look like they did when they first arrived. All that light is gone from their eyes." Taemin felt a weight in his chest. "I should never have taught them." "Don't say that. You gave them something beautiful. The fact that it's being suppressed doesn't mean it was wrong to share it. But it didn't feel that way. It felt like he had shown them a world they couldn't have." The next day, everything changed. Taemin was called to the station's main operations center. A coolant system was showing irregular readings. Probably just a sensor malfunction. But it needed to be checked. He grabbed his toolkit and headed to the central hub. The operations center was busy as always. Dozens of crew members, monitoring systems, managing traffic, coordinating supplies. Station Commander Zhao, a stern woman in her 50s, was reviewing reports when Taemin arrived. "Coolant system showing fluctuations in Sector C," she said without preamble. "Could be nothing, could be serious. Check it out." Taemin nodded and made his way to Sector C. The corridors there were quieter, mostly storage and some recreational facilities. As he walked, he heard something unusual. Young voices, multiple species, all talking excitedly. He followed the sound to the Youth Activity Center. Through the transparent wall, he saw a group of about 20 younglings from at least 6 different species. They were organized into teams, playing some kind of game. And every time a team scored a point, they erupted in their species-specific versions of Victory Strike. Crack, Click. Thump. The sounds overlapped into a rhythm of celebration. In the center of it all were the 4 Velcrin cubs. They weren't playing exactly, more like they were teaching. Peek was showing a small, blue-skinned alien how to angle her hand properly. Sean was demonstrating timing to a group of insectoids. Moru and Jessa were playing referees, awarding points, and leading the victory strike celebrations. Taemin paused to watch. This was what Yuna had been talking about. The cubs weren't just doing victory strikes anymore. They were using them to build bridges between species, to create community. He wondered if Elder Krivoth had seen this, if he knew what his cubs had created. Taemin continued to the coolant system access point. The panel showed the same irregular readings. He opened the maintenance hatch and immediately smelled something wrong. Chemical scent. Faint, but distinct. Not good. He climbed into the service tunnel and followed the coolant lines. The smell got stronger. Then he found it. A crack in one of the main coolant pipes. Small now, but already leaking, and if it grew, if the pressure built up enough, the whole system could fail. Sector C would flood with toxic coolant in minutes. His heart started racing. This wasn't a simple repair. This was an emergency, waiting to happen. He backed out of the tunnel and immediately contacted Commander Zhao. "We have a serious problem. Coolant line is cracked. It's going to rupture." How long do we have? Hard to say. Could be hours, could be minutes. We need to evacuate Sector C and shut down the coolant system. Evacuating now. Get out of there, Taemin. Alarms started blaring. Red lights flashed in the corridors. The automated announcement system began. Attention. Emergency evacuation of Sector C. All personnel proceed to designated emergency exits immediately. Taemin ran toward the exit. Behind him, he heard the coolant pipe groan. The crack was spreading. He rounded a corner and nearly collided with a Gorvan maintenance worker. "The younglings," the worker said, his rocky face showing distress. In the activity center. The emergency door sealed before they could get out. They're trapped. Taemin felt ice in his veins. How many? 20. Maybe 25. All different species. The cubs are in there too. Behind them, the coolant pipe made a shrieking sound. The crack was becoming a rupture. Commander Zhao's voice came over his communicator. "Taemin, get out now. That's an order. There are kids trapped in the activity center. Emergency teams are on their way. There's no time." Taemin was already moving toward the activity center, against the flow of evacuating personnel. "I'm closest. I'm going in. Taemin, that is not your job. You are not trained for rescue operations. I'm not leaving those kids." He cut the communication and ran. The activity center's main entrance was sealed by emergency bulkheads. Heavy doors, designed to contain coolant floods or atmospheric breaches. There was no opening them without authorization from operations, and that would take time they didn't have. But there was another way. Maintenance access tunnels ran through every section of the station. Small, cramped, and technically restricted during emergencies. But they connected to the activity center. Taemin found the nearest access panel, pried it open, and squeezed inside. The tunnel was dark and narrow. He had to crawl on his hands and knees, his toolkit banging against his back. Behind him, the sound of the failing coolant system grew louder. A high-pitched whistle that meant pressure was building to critical levels. He crawled faster. After what felt like forever but was probably only 2 minutes, he reached the activity center's maintenance access. He could hear young voices on the other side. Scared voices. Some crying. Some trying to be brave. He opened the hatch and dropped down into the center. 23 pairs of eyes stared at him. Young aliens of all shapes and sizes, all frightened. And in the middle of them, trying to keep everyone calm, were the 4 Velcrin cubs. "Taemin!" Pick's voice was tight with stress but relieved to see him. "The door's sealed. We cannot get out." "I know. I'm going to get you out. but we have to move fast. He looked at the group. Some of the younglings were very young, barely able to walk on their own. Some were injured, having been knocked over in the panic. Can everyone move? Jiro cannot walk, Sean said, pointing to a small Thanari with a damaged leg. And Kessa is too scared to move. A tiny, furry alien was curled in a ball, shaking. Taemin thought fast. The maintenance tunnel was too small for all of them to move through quickly, especially with injured and scared younglings. But there was another option. The ventilation system connected to external corridors. The vents were larger than the maintenance tunnel, designed for exactly these kinds of emergency evacuations. Listen up, everyone, he said, projecting calm he didn't feel. We're going through the vents. It's going to be dark and a little scary, but we're all going together. The bigger ones will help the smaller ones. We're going to take care of each other. Understand? Various forms of nodding and agreement sounds. Pik, Shan, Moru, Jessa, I need your help. Can you organize everyone into a line? The cubs moved immediately. No hesitation. They had been trained for this kind of discipline. Even if they had never faced a real emergency before, Pik raised her paw. Everyone who can walk well, make a line here. She pointed. Younglings moved to her. Shan did the same. Everyone who needs help, come to me. Within 30 seconds, they had the group organized. Taemin was amazed. These cubs, who Elder Krivath had said were undisciplined, were showing leadership that some adults couldn't match. He pried open the ventilation cover and helped the first youngling inside. Then, the next. One by one, they crawled into the vent, heading toward safety. Behind them, the coolant system's whistle became a scream. Time was running out. The ventilation shaft was dark and cramped. Taemin crawled behind the line of younglings, making sure none were left behind. Ahead, Pik led the group with a small emergency light she had grabbed from the activity center. Her voice carried back through the shaft, steady and encouraging. Keep moving, one behind the other. We are almost safe. But they weren't almost safe. Taemin knew the layout of the station. The vent system would take them to a junction point about 50 meters ahead. From there, they could drop into a corridor in Sector B, outside the evacuation zone. 50 meters, with 23 frightened younglings of different species, some injured, moving through a dark metal tube. Behind them, a deep boom echoed through the station. The coolant pipe had ruptured. Toxic coolant was flooding into Sector C right now. They had minutes at most. Faster, Taemin called forward. We need to move faster. A small voice came from ahead. I am scared. I cannot do this. That was Kessa, the tiny, furry alien who had been frozen with fear in the activity center. Yes, you can. That was Moru's voice, calm and firm. I am right behind you. You are not alone. We do this together. Taemin heard shuffling as they continued moving. The younglings were doing better than he had hoped. Fear should have made them panic, made them freeze or push or cry, but instead, they were working as a team. And the cubs, those 4 young Velkrin who had been called undisciplined and inappropriate, were leading them with natural authority. They reached the junction. The space opened up slightly, enough for several younglings to cluster together. Taemin squeezed forward to assess the situation. The drop into the corridor below was about 2 meters. Not far, but too high for the smallest younglings to jump safely. He would need to lower them down one at a time. Okay, here's what we're going to do, Taemin said. I'm going to drop down first. Then, I'll catch each of you as you come down. Biggest ones first. Then you can help catch the smaller ones. Shan, the largest of the cubs, nodded. I will go first. Taemin dropped through the vent opening and landed in the corridor. Emergency lights cast everything in a red glow. All right. Come on. Shan dropped down. Taemin caught him, steadying the young Velkrin. Then came Jessa. Then Moru, a Gorvan adolescent, 2. The Nari, younglings. They formed a catching team below the vent, arms and appendages ready. One by one, the younglings came through. Each safe landing brought relief. 18 down. 19. 20. Then a problem. Jiro cannot climb down, Pick's voice called from above. Taemin looked up at the vent. Can you lower them? We will try. In the vent shaft, Pick and the remaining younglings worked together. They carefully positioned Jiro, the injured Thenari, so his damaged leg wouldn't be hurt further. Pick held his upper body while another youngling supported his lower segments. Ready, Pick called. They lowered Jiro as far as they could, then had to let go. He dropped the final half-meter. Taemin and Shan caught him together, cradling his segmented body carefully. You did great, Taemin told him. Almost done now. That left two. Pick and Kessa. Come on, Kessa. Pick said gently. It is just a short drop. Everyone is waiting for you. They will catch you. I promise. I cannot. I cannot. Kessa's voice was small and trembling. Time was running out. Taemin could hear the coolant system alarms growing more urgent. The toxic fluid was spreading. Soon it would reach the ventilation system. Once that happened, the vents would automatically seal to prevent contamination from spreading. If Pick and Kessa were still inside when that happened, they would be trapped. Taemin made a decision. Pick, I'm coming back up. Hold on. He climbed. It was harder going up than coming down, but fear gave him strength. He reached the junction and pulled himself up into the shaft. Pick was crouched next to Kessa, who was pressed against the vent wall, shaking. The little alien's eyes were closed, tight. Hey, Taemin said softly. Kessa, right? I'm Taemin. I fix things, and I'm going to fix this situation, but I need your help. Kessa opened her eyes slightly. I'm going to carry you. Is that okay? Timely N-use 9. I'm going to carry you. Timely N-use 9. A tiny nod. Taemin gently picked up Kessa. She was light, barely 5 kilograms. She clutched onto him with small paws. Pick. Let's go. You first. Pick crawled to the junction and looked down at the drop. For a moment, Taemin saw uncertainty in her eyes. She was young, barely past childhood by Velcrin standards. She had been brave for everyone else. But now, facing the drop alone, she was scared. Taemin shifted Kessa carefully and reached out his free hand to Pick. Together. We go together. Pick looked at his hand. Then, despite everything, despite the emergency, and the fear, and the danger, she smiled. She raised her paw. Taemin understood. He smiled back. Victory strike, he said. Victory strike, Pick confirmed. She hit his palm. Crack. The sound echoed in the metal shaft, sharp and defiant. Below, the other younglings heard it, and they understood too. Without being told, they all raised their hands, paws, appendages, antennae. 21 younglings, 6 different species, all ready. Victory strike. They shouted together. Pick's fear vanished. She dropped through the opening, and her friends caught her. Taemin came next, cradling Kessa. Strong arms caught them both. Run, Taemin shouted. They ran. A stream of younglings of all different species, moving together through the corridor. The Gorvan adolescents, with their strong, rocky bodies, carried the smallest ones. The Thenari younglings used their multiple legs to scout ahead. The cubs coordinated everything, keeping the group together. Behind them, emergency bulkheads began slamming down as the station's systems tried to contain the coolant contamination. They had to stay ahead of the ceiling sections. They burst through a final doorway into Sector B just as the bulkhead behind them sealed with a heavy clang. Safe. They were safe. Emergency personnel rushed forward. Medics began checking the younglings for injuries. Commander Zhao was there, her stern face showing rare emotion. Everyone accounted for? She asked. 23 younglings and 1 engineer, Taemin said, breathing hard. All safe. Commander Zhao looked at him for a long moment. That was incredibly stupid and incredibly brave. You disobeyed a direct order. Yes, ma'am. You saved 23 lives. The Cubs saved them. I just showed them the way out. They did everything else. The Cubs were clustered together, checking on each other. Dirty, tired, but unharmed. Other younglings were being reunited with their guardians and parents. Relief and tears mixed together. Then the crowd parted. Elder Krivath walked through, his face unreadable. He stopped in front of the 4 Cubs. For a moment, nobody spoke. The Cubs stood straight, awaiting judgment. Elder Krivath looked at each of them in turn. Then he did something Taemin had never seen him do. He knelt down, lowering himself to their level. You led them out, he said quietly. Yes, Elder, Pick said. We tried to remember our training. Discipline. Organization. Calm, under pressure. You did more than that. Elder Krivath's voice was thick with emotion. You gave them hope. You gave them courage. I saw the recordings from the corridor cameras. I saw you do that gesture. That victory strike. And I saw every youngling respond to it. They were ready to give up. To panic. But that simple gesture reminded them they were not alone. That they were a team. Pick's ears lowered, uncertain. You said it was undignified. I was wrong. The admission seemed to cost Elder Krivath greatly. I was so focused on maintaining tradition that I forgot why we have traditions. We have them to keep us strong, to keep us connected, to help us survive. He looked at Taemin. Your human gesture did all of those things better than any of our ancient rituals. It transcended species. It created unity where there should have been chaos. Taemin felt a lump in his throat. Elder Krivath stood and addressed all the younglings who had been rescued. You are heroes. All of you. You faced fear and chose courage. You faced danger and chose to help each other. Your species will be proud. Your families will be proud. And I am proud. He turned back to his cubs and slowly, carefully, raised his paw. Pick stared at it. Elder, I believe the proper response is victory strike, Elder Krivath said. Pick's eyes filled with tears. She raised her paw and struck his. Crack! Then Shan. Crack. Moru. Crack. Jessa. Crack. The sound rippled out. Soon every youngling and every adult in the corridor was exchanging victory strikes. The corridor filled with the sounds of connection. Cracks and clicks and thumps and thuds. Different species. Different sounds. But all the same meaning. We did it. Together. We survived. We won. Taemin found Yuna in the crowd. She was crying and smiling at the same time. They raised their hands and struck them together. Victory strike. Outside the station, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the small dramas of living beings. But inside, something had changed forever. 3 months had passed since the coolant system crisis. Station Epsilon 7 had returned to normal operations, but nothing felt quite the same. Taemin stood in the observation lounge, watching ships come and go. His 6-month assignment was nearly complete. Soon, he would return to Earth. The thought brought a strange mixture of relief and sadness. There you are. Yuna entered with 2 cups of tea. She handed him one and joined him at the window. Big day tomorrow. Yeah. Tomorrow was the Galactic Coalition Youth Summit. Representatives from 40 different species would gather to discuss cooperation and cultural exchange, and the victory strike would be officially recognized as a universal gesture of partnership. How are you feeling about it? Yuna asked. Taemin shrugged. Weird. I just taught some kids a high five. I didn't mean for it to become this whole thing. That's how the best things happen. Small gestures with big impacts. Yuna sipped her tea. My research paper on Victory Strike is being published next week. The data is remarkable. Youth cooperation across the coalition has increased by measurable percentages. Multi-species friendships are forming at unprecedented rates. And it all traces back to one human engineer who wanted to share a moment of joy with 4 lonely cubs. The cubs did all the real work. They're the ones who spread it, who made it mean something. Speaking of which, Yuna pointed out the window. Here they come. A transport shuttle was docking. Through the viewport, Taemin could see Velcrin passengers disembarking. Among them were the 4 cubs, now accompanied by a full delegation of Velcrin officials. Elder Krivath had returned to the Velcrin homeworld 6 weeks ago with the cubs. He had promised to bring them back for the summit, but Taemin hadn't been sure if it would actually happen. Velcrin were not known for changing their minds about cultural matters, but here they were. Taemin and Yuna made their way to the docking bay. A crowd had already gathered. News of the cubs' return had spread quickly. Younglings from a dozen species waited excitedly, along with their guardians and teachers. The airlock opened. Elder Krivath emerged first, his gray fur neatly groomed, his bearing dignified. But there was something different about him. His eyes seemed warmer, less severe. Then came the cubs. They had grown, not much taller, but more confident. They walked with their heads high, their tails moving with purpose instead of nervousness. When Pick saw Taemin, her whole face lit up. She broke protocol and ran to him. Taemin. He caught her in a hug. Hey, Pick. You look good. All of you. The other cubs gathered around. Shan, Moru, and Jessa all greeted him with obvious affection. They looked healthy and happy. The sadness he had seen in them months ago was completely gone. We have so much to tell you, Peak said excitedly. The homeworld changed. Because of Victory Strike. Because of what happened here. Changed how? Elder Krivath approached. Perhaps I can explain. Engineer Taemin. Dr. Yuna, would you join us for a meal? We have much to discuss. In the station's diplomatic dining area, over food from a dozen worlds, Elder Krivath told the story. When I returned with the cubs, I was prepared for resistance. Our people do not embrace change easily. But I had recordings from the emergency. I had testimony from other species about what the cubs accomplished. And I had my own conscience, which would not let me ignore what I had seen. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I presented the case to the Velcrin Council. I argued that our traditions of discipline and dignity were important, but they had become rigid. We had forgotten that traditions are meant to serve the people, not imprison them. The cubs demonstrated something we had lost: the ability to adapt, to connect, to lead with both strength and joy. What did the council say? Yuna asked. They were divided. Half wanted to condemn the Victory Strike as a corruption of Velcrin values. But the other half, especially the younger council members, saw the truth. Our young ones were thriving with this gesture. They were more engaged, more confident, more connected to each other and to other species. How could that be wrong? Peak spoke up. We demonstrated, Shan, Moru, Jessa, and I. We showed the council everything we learned here. How Victory Strike helped us make friends. How it gave us courage. How it reminded us that we were not alone. And we did Victory Strikes with the council members, Jessa added with a mischievous grin. The younger ones liked it. The older ones were shocked. But by the end, even Elder Thavian, who is 140 years old, tried it. The vote was close, Elder Krivath continued. But ultimately, the council decided to recognize Victory Strike as an acceptable expression of partnership and achievement, not replacing our traditional gestures, but existing alongside them. Young Velcrin may now choose which gesture feels appropriate for each situation. That's amazing, Taemin said. That's real change. It was necessary change. Our culture was suffocating our young. They needed room to breathe, to be themselves while still being Velkrin. Elder Krivath looked at Taemin directly. You gave them that room. For that, our people owe you a debt. I really didn't do anything special. It was just a high five. It was connection, Elder Krivath said. And connection is always special. The next day, the youth summit began. The main assembly hall was filled with young beings from across the coalition. Taemin sat in the audience with Yuna, watching as each species presented their cultural traditions. Then came the special ceremony. Commander Zhao took the stage. We are here to recognize a gesture that has united our young people across species lines. A simple act that transcends language and physiology. The gesture known as Victory Strike. The cubs walked onto the stage. They had been chosen to demonstrate because they were the first non-humans to adopt and spread the gesture. Pick spoke into the microphone, her voice clear and confident. Victory Strike is more than just hitting hands together. It is about acknowledging each other. About celebrating together. About remembering that we are stronger as a team than as individuals. It is not a Velkrin gesture or a human gesture. It belongs to everyone who chooses to use it. She raised her paw. Today, we invite all of you to join us in making Victory Strike an official symbol of the Galactic Coalition Youth Initiative. A reminder that we are all in this together. The hall erupted in sound. Every species present was exchanging their version of Victory Strike. Cracks, clicks, thumps, whistles, thuds. The noise was chaotic and beautiful. Taemin felt tears in his eyes. He had taught 4 lonely cubs a simple gesture 3 months ago. Now it was bringing together the youth of an entire galactic civilization. Yuna grabbed his hand and squeezed. You did good, she whispered. On stage, the cubs were joined by younglings from other species. They formed a line and did synchronized victory strikes, each pair using their own variation. The audience loved it. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Taemin found himself talking to ambassadors and educators from worlds he had never heard of. Everyone wanted to thank him, to tell him how Victory Strike had impacted their communities. A Venari elder clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. Our children used to be taught that showing excitement was improper. But after seeing your gesture, we realized we were teaching them to suppress their joy. Now our schools encourage victory strikes. The younglings are happier, and surprisingly, their academic performance has improved. A Gorvan official rumbled his agreement. My people are not naturally expressive. We are stone, quiet, and strong. But the young ones needed something. Victory Strike gave them a way to share emotion without feeling weak. It has brought our generations closer together. Story after story, species after species. The impact spread further than Taemin had imagined possible. As the reception continued, he slipped away to a quiet corridor. He needed a moment to process everything. He found Elder Krivath standing alone at an observation window, looking at the stars. They are beautiful, are they not? The elder said without turning. The stars. So distant. So different from each other. Yet when we look at them together, we see patterns, constellations, stories that connect us across the darkness. Taemin joined him at the window. That's poetic. The cubs taught me to see things differently. To appreciate that change is not always loss. Sometimes it is growth. Elder Krivath turned to him. I was wrong about you, Engineer Taemin. I thought you were corrupting them with inappropriate human behavior. But you were teaching them something essential. Something we, Velkrin, had forgotten. You taught them how to be happy. They were always capable of happiness. They just needed permission. Exactly. Elder Krivath raised his paw. May I? Taemin raised his hand. They struck together, human and Velkrin, the sound echoing in the quiet corridor. Thank you, Elder Krivath said simply. 2 weeks later, Taemin's assignment ended. He packed his belongings, said goodbye to the friends he had made, and boarded the transport back to Earth. The cubs came to see him off. All four of them stood at the docking bay, trying not to cry. "Will you come back?" Peak asked. "Maybe someday." "But you four are going to be busy. I heard you're all training to be youth ambassadors." "Yes," Sean said proudly. "We will travel to different worlds, teaching cooperation and cultural exchange. And Victory Strike," Moru added. "Especially Victory Strike," Jessa confirmed. Taemin knelt down to their level. "I'm proud of all of you. You took something simple and made it meaningful. You made it yours. That's special. You gave it to us," Peak said. "We will never forget that." They exchanged victory strikes, one by one. 4 cracks that sounded like farewell and promise at the same time. As the transport pulled away from the station, Taemin watched through the viewport until the cubs were just small figures in the distance, their paws still raised in salute. 10 years passed. Taemin was back on Earth, working as a senior engineer for a major aerospace company. He had a good life, a good career, but he never forgot the cubs, or the station, or the moment when a simple gesture became something bigger. He kept in touch with Yuna, who was now a leading expert on interspecies cultural development. She sent him updates about Victory Strike's spread across the coalition. It was being taught in schools on 70 different worlds. It had been adapted by over 200 species. It was even being considered as an official greeting for first contact situations with newly discovered civilizations. One evening, Taemin was watching the news when a story caught his attention. The headline read, "First Contact Success. Velcrin Ambassador uses Victory Strike to establish peace with previously isolated species." The video showed a now-adult Pick standing on an alien world. She was taller, more mature, but still had that same bright intelligence in her eyes. She was facing a being from a species humanity had never encountered before. They looked nervous, uncertain. Pick was speaking, her words translated by the news broadcast. "We come in peace. We come as friends. And among friends, we have a gesture. It means we are together. It means we celebrate each other. Would you like to learn it?" The alien being looked confused. Pick smiled and raised her paw. After a moment's hesitation, the alien raised their appendage. They struck together, and the sound echoed across the square where hundreds of beings from both species watched. The alien's whole demeanor changed. Understanding lit their face. They struck Pick's paw again, harder this time, and laughed. The square erupted in celebration. First contact. Successful. A new species joining the coalition. All because of a gesture that meant, "We're in this together." Taemin felt his eyes water. He raised his hand to the screen, to that image of Peak spreading joy across the galaxy. His wife, Haewon, came into the room and saw what he was watching. She smiled and raised her hand. He struck it, the familiar crack bringing comfort and pride. "She was one of the cubs you taught, wasn't she?" Haewon asked. "Yeah, the smallest one, the bravest one." On the screen, Pick was teaching the new species how to do Victory Strike properly. A crowd of alien younglings surrounded her, all eager to learn. Some gestures, Taemin thought, were small. Just 2 hands, meeting in the air. Just a sound. Just a moment. But some gestures echoed across galaxies, across generations, across the vast space between stars. They connected beings who had nothing in common except the desire to celebrate together, to acknowledge each other, to say without words, "We are not alone." Victory Strike. A simple gift from one human to 4 lonely cubs. A legacy that would outlive them all.